Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate all your support. Shout out to the 19. Hope you're having a fantastic day. If you can, I know for a lot of you it might be affected by the performance, shall we say, of the Indiana Fever last night out in Golden State. It was, of course, not very pretty. Not very pretty at all, folks. Wow. Yeah, so I'm probably going to make some people angry because I'm going to be honest, but hey, you know what? I try and be fair. I try and be fair. So, take a deep breath. Let's walk through this. There's no doubt it was bad. It was a poor performance. This is a team that looked like they had already lost, even though they got that early double-digit lead. They weren't really playing well. You didn't look at that lead and think, all right, yeah, we've got this. It's just going to be a start to finish. I wouldn't say cakewalk, but comfortable win, right? But it didn't look that way. The score was a little bit deceiving early on because everything about the Fever from the body language. They didn't have any energy. There wasn't a whole lot of celebration to back up what they just did in Connecticut, what they just did against the New York Liberty. There wasn't any fire, right? There was nothing to going back at the refs for poor calls. They looked like a team that had packed this one in from day one. But they get an opportunity to bounce back Sunday. Is it time to panic? No, 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 not yet. Great teams have bad games. Great teams have bad stretches. But there are definitely concerns as well from this game because there's some things that have been repeated in other games as well that we need to talk about. And look, okay. Caitlin Clark, her shooting, great shooters are going to have terrible shooting nights. That is just the way it is. Just like great batters in baseball, they're going to have those 0 for 15 streaks, those 1 for 27 streaks before they get hot. And it suddenly looks like every time they put bat to ball, it finds a place in the field and they get on base with a hit. That's just the way it is. We all saw those, 38 seconds of magic, right? So we know that's in Caitlin Clark. So you're also going to get those cold streaks as well. But here's the thing. Great teams, they minimize those downtimes. And there are definitely concerns with this Fever's team with their inability to minimize those downtimes. The offense, too damn slow. This offense is too damn slow. This looked like Austin Kelly got marching orders like, hey, you know what? They look really good last time you coached Austin, but this time you're going to run my system, says Stephanie White. Relax. It's a little tongue in cheek, but this, come on. It did look like they say you're going to run my offense so they don't look so good. Okay. That's what's important. Seriously, this motion offense, it's got to be scrapped. It looks bad. They're not improving with it at all. It doesn't look like they look for shooting opportunities created from it. They just kind of go through the motions and it doesn't create good shots. It just runs the shot clock down. And one of the ways you can see that, and I've talked about this before, is while field goal attempts, right, there are one statistic, obviously. You don't look at, oh, this team had more shots than this team, so this team won or probably won. It's not an indicator of the quality of a game for a team. That being said, with a team like the Fever, with a player like Caitlin Clark, and the fact that everyone knows they should be playing up tempo, it is a good snapshot outside of context as to whether or not they are playing their type of basketball, whether or not they are playing what is most effective for the Fever. And they certainly did not do that last night. Right? We can see it. We can see it right here. If I go to the bottom, 66 shots. 29 of 66 when you shoot a terrible 8 of 29 from 3. It's actually not so bad. They finally shot well from the line, although typical of the Fever, they didn't get there all that many times. But 66 shots, folks. You realize that's fewer per game than the Christie side touches in the paint touches team last year, which I believe was 67 and a half. Even with that very slow start, sides and all that nonsense. This is fewer than that. This team should be taking 80 shots a game. This team should be taking 80 shots a game. All right, where is it? I have it here somewhere. Here we go. Look at this now. This is the team before Caitlin got hurt. They were first in the league and had like 74 and a half. So, right, good progress, even though Stephanie White wanted to run more motion and run down the shot clock. Caitlin was being Caitlin enough. There was enough up tempo that it was an improvement on last year. Now the league leader is the Dallas Wings, and they're under 72 shots. The Fever were at like 74.5, maybe 74.6. Now they're all the way down in the middle of the pack. They're at sixth, 67 shots per game. My God, this hurts my soul. They're taking fewer shots per game than they did last year. Now their threes are up, which is good. But man, you have Caitlin Clark and you're running an offense that takes 67 shots per game. There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for that. That is not a good number. And Caitlin Clark's numbers, within this stretch, right, they're looking a lot more, right, if we go up here, a lot more like last year. Now, okay, she made first team and she was, fourth in MVP voting and all that. I get that, but new front office, new head coach that's supposed to be an upgrade, new roster that's supposed to be an upgrade. And again, I know it's early, but these are the numbers that we saw. I mean, her field goal percentage is exactly the same. Her 3-point percentage is just a little bit up, but her overall effective field goal percentage is actually down from last year. Her assists slightly up, right? Rebounds the same. Points slightly up still, but she only had 11 last night, so that tells you something. And don't forget, last year had that. That's why I try and put it in the context of, well, she was fourth in voting, first team, right? And her numbers were actually phenomenal post break, right? Like if you break it down, which is my point. So the fact that her numbers look a little like last year's is a little bit concerning with how this offense is being run. It's supposed to be a better roster. It's supposed to be better coaching. Is it all that? Remember all that talk about the Fever organization, right? There will be a class of the WNBA, class of the league. Now you know. Are we sure that it's the Indiana Fever and not the Golden State Valkyries, with what they've done early with an expansion team? What about their front office? What about their head coach? The one that I think might have been the reason for Becky Hammon's success in Las Vegas, folks. Are we sure it's not the Golden State Valkyries with their front office and their head coach and their roster decisions that are not the class of the WNBA? Because they are doing a whole lot more with a whole lot less than the Indiana Fever, who have the generational talent of Caitlin Clark. That is their window. It is championships. That is the goal all the time. The Fever have moved to a new level in terms of expectations. They've joined normal sports, I don't know if I should say fandom, but in terms of expectations, normal sports franchises that are considered elite in how they are run. They're the Yankees, they're the Eagles, they're the Lakers. And so the heat, the criticism, it is going to come a lot faster. The patience is non-existent. I promise you, the Eagles were 2-2 and we wanted our coach's head. They lost one more game, and that was when our quarterback took a cheap shot and went out with a concussion, and our safety got thrown out for being taunted. And that was the only other game they lost all season long on their way to a Super Bowl title. And we still, that's just the way it is. Ask some Dallas fans about how they feel about Jerry Jones, even though he had all that success early. But when you get like that and you become that type of organization, you quickly get calls for change because anything less than contending is unacceptable. And this team, I'll tell you what, this team looked really, really soft last night. I think I have it here. I want to listen a little bit to what Kelsey Mitchell says right here, because props to Kelsey for this.
I don't want you to speak for Caitlin, but you guys have seen a lot of defenses go up against her. Did you see anything that Golden State did in particular? Did she say anything about something that they were doing in particular that may have slowed her a bit tonight?
I think that overall it's not about just Caitlin specifically. I thought it was about our entire group. We were soft. We just weren't. They made us pay by just being stronger, being tougher, 50-50 balls, deflections, getting in the passing lanes. That's just a piece of just being aggressive and having an ability to like look at our best player and be like, nah, they gonna be aggressive. And I think that we allowed it. We kind of tucked our tail a little bit tonight on the aggression side, and I think that's our down play right now. We have to learn how to see rounds for what they is. That's one thing, but be aggressive and stop being so soft. And I think that as a group, we just collectively allowed too much.
Wow. Couldn't have said it better myself. So glad that came from a player. By the way, and I think the beginning of the season, I talked about like when Kelsey Mitchell was saying about having that veteran presence, like Bonner coming in and everything. And I said, I wasn't being really critical, but I was just kind of like pointing out, well, Kelsey, you're the vet now, my friend. I know you haven't been in the league where your team has enjoyed success. So I get that there's that winning culture thing that's a little different, but you are the vet. Now, this right here, I'm shouting out Kelsey Mitchell hard here. Look, I am critical of her when she goes hero ball and gets out of control. I'm going to shout her out when she is on, and she is on right here with some truth telling, folks. This Kelsey Mitchell asking about that veteran presence. You just showed veteran presence. You just showed veteran leadership for a team. You just put it out there, the truth about how your team is playing, no bones about it. You said, look, hey, we were just soft. That's all. We weren't aggressive. We let them punch us in the mouth. They took it to us. We didn't respond, and we can't have that. And that is 100% true. I love this so much about Kelsey Mitchell. She didn't throw any individual players under the bus. She didn't go so hard on her team that it causes a locker room problem. This is a great example of veteran leadership and a type of leadership that a team that wants to win a title is going to need. This was actually fantastic by Kelsey Mitchell. I love this so much. And look, Clark obviously did not have her usual game. I think she was also sick, indications of how she looked last game and this game. And she wasn't terrible overall. I mean, she almost had an ugly Angel Reese, Alyssa Thomas triple double. She still grabbed 7 rebounds, had 9 assists. But there were the 6 turnovers. She 3 for 14, 0 for 7 for 3. But like I said, that happens with great shooters. The previous 2 games, she was 4 of 6 and 7 of 14 from 3. Right, 11 for 20 from 3, and we know where she shoots her threes from the last 2 games. So it's just it happens. She had a bad game, folks. It happens to the greatest. Michael Jordan had bad games. It's just the truth. We don't need to get upset that people say she has a bad game. She did. But like Kelsey said, so did the entire team. They were soft. They didn't come ready to play. I almost wondered if there were issues after the last game with everything that went on. And look, obviously, this is clearly me speculating just from experience of being on teams, obviously not at this level, but also just being a fan all my life and seeing teams where you get certain teams that they have locker room issues, other teams that don't. And it's just putting it out there that you wonder with what we saw last game, is that a possibility? Is there stuff going on in the locker room that we don't know about that is now impacting play on the court? And the players aren't going to shout that out to fans. And I agree with that. Okay. That's not the type of thing that, you don't need to be putting that out there. But which is a different thing than what Kelsey Mitchell just did, which I actually loved. But would this be surprising to all of you? Natasha Howard, she's all about being MVP, and I'm sorry, she does some good things. I'm not saying she's a terrible player, but Natasha Howard seems to very much be me first on this Indiana team. She's going to take what she can take from the Indiana Fever, as opposed to being a piece that helps the Indiana Fever win a championship. And, don't get me started on her wifey and her sister and how unhinged they are, how mentally unstable they are, the big Hatelins that they are. And Natasha Howard hasn't said, hey, you know what? I played for this team. Caitlin's a teammate. I ride with Caitlin regardless of any other stuff off the court that might be issues for any of you. As my family, you need to respect me enough that you're not putting this stuff on the internet. That should be said. If it's not, or it is not, because obviously then that makes you wonder, hey, does Natasha Howard roll with that stuff? She hasn't shut it down. Bree Turner, absolutely useless. Look, she barely even plays, but she's clearly a bad teammate. And not just I don't even mean the whole activism stuff, although, that may impact what she does. But a case in point, two players went after Sophie Cunningham, right? We all know that. Lindsey Allen got there first, tried to grab her in the throat. Bree Turner was right there, folks. Bree Turner stood there and watched while 2 opposing players attacked Sophie Cunningham, attacked her teammate at the same time. and Bree Turner watched. She did nothing. That is a dangerous situation, and they did it like kind of off court under the basket, and you got camera people, and like there's also an easy, just when you're backing up, you easily fall. Maybe you hit your head on something and get a concussion, or you turn an ankle again for Sophie Cunningham. And the fact that Bree Turner stood there is absolutely unacceptable. You do not belong on a team if you allow that to happen. So maybe there are issues there as well that could come out and be like, hey, they can be watching this stuff in film, and Sophie's like, what the hell? Are you kidding me with this stuff? Or are you my teammate or not? Do you have my back or not? The turnovers, right? If we go back, we got what, 16, I think? 16 turnovers, which isn't absolutely terrible, but it is a little high. Caitlin was sloppy too. She had 6, but the entire team was sloppy. I think the Valkyries only got like 10 points off of them, but there's more to it than that for me. One of the things people never talk about with turnovers is they talk about, there were this many turnovers and the other team got this many points, and actually only giving up 10 points on 16 turnovers. It's not bad. It's not bad. Um, but you also have to understand, especially when you're a team with a high scoring offense like the Fever, where that's even more important. Every turnover isn't just about the points you give up to the other team. It's the points you didn't get, right? If your team has an effective field goal percentage of 50, okay, that's a point per possession, right? So 16 turnovers is 16 possessions. That's 16 points. And then add to the 10 that you gave up. Right now we're talking 26 points. I did the math right, didn't I? Yeah. Right. So, I mean, if you normally, or I should say, if you shoot 50%, yeah, you had 16 possessions, you make 8 buckets, that's 16 points. So you lost out on that opportunity. So it's actually, I mean, you lost out on the opportunity to get 32 to 48 points, obviously, if you were to score a 2 or a 3 every possession. But at the very least, you probably lost out on 16 points. I feel like before the trade deadline, the Fever front office has to make some roster moves. It's just, as Kelsey said about being soft, it's not a team that looks mentally prepared at this point to make a title run. Things can change a lot. I get it. They're 6-6. This is not me hitting the panic button. This is just me putting out my thoughts and my understanding of the game for all of you. And you can hit me back in the comments and say, hey, I disagree. This is just kind of my experience of playing and being a fan and seeing the game from a coach's perspective all these years as well. And just, this is what I'm looking at. But don't forget, it's only 12 games, but they only play 44, right? So they're more than a quarter away through the schedule. And they need to be a top 4 seed, I think, preferably a top 2 or 3. They've got to get at least a first round home court advantage series. One final thing I want to add about Clark, and I've said this multiple times, I think, but I think it's important now because people are making a big deal about Paige's stats. And this isn't specifically about Paige. It's just that's kind of what made me think of it is if you really want to know how good a basketball player is on the court, you watch how they're guarded. You watch what the defense does and what they try and take away. And I think we all know there's not been a player in the WNBA, in the history of the WNBA, that has been guarded close to the way Caitlin Clark gets guarded by every team, every game, whether it's full court, whether it's the blitzes, the constant double teams, the clutching, the grabbing, and everything else. The entire game plan is about taking away Caitlin Clark and making other teams beat them. No one else is like that. And it's not even close. So the defenses, the coaches of the other teams, they're telling you who the best player in the WNBA is. They don't do this for Asia either, folks. It's not done for Nafisa Collier or Brianna Stewart. It's only done to Caitlin Clark. Okay. But yeah, all right. That was the one final thing, but actually I had a couple of other thoughts. I'm sorry. Terrible second half. Obviously, it looked like a team that didn't care. It looked like a team at the end of a long season, actually, who had been out of playoff contention for a while, and they're just sort of mailing it in, waiting for the season to end. Boston was solid. She had a terrible whistle, as always, of course, got in foul trouble, which limits her. But 15 points of your 17 came in the first half. While your team's outscored 50-33 in the second half. Okay, that's a 100-point pace in the second half and only 66 for you. Christy Side's teams, once they got going, 33 was a quarter, folks, not a half. 50-33 in the second half. And AB only had 2 points in the second half. So yeah, she had a 17-point, 11 or 12 rebound double-double. But man, when it was needed, it was not there. Bottom line, Golden State Valkyries came out and in sports vernacular, they punched the Fever in the mouth. And instead of responding and punching back, metaphorically, guys, figuratively, Fever curled up in a ball and they simply tapped out. They were like, enough's enough. They pulled a Forrest Whitaker against Anderson Silva. I've had enough of you hitting me in the mouth. I've had enough of you beating me up. Let's just end this. That is not a good sign for a team who wants to go make a championship run. How someone on a team, a player or a team responds to adversity says a lot more about them than how they act when things are going well. Wow, this got a lot longer than I thought. Sorry about that. I actually thought this was going to be a short, like 8 or 10-minute one talking about this game because I'm like, man, what do I even talk about here? But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, appreciate you so much for checking out this video. Check out some of the shirts too if you would like. I know a lot of people commented about some of the designs. They hadn't even known that they were there in that video when I actually finally showed one. And I appreciate it. I'm glad you liked them. So thank you for that. And yeah, hit me up in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the game. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate it as always. Go have the day you deserve, of course. And I will talk to you later.